Hello, colleagues. It's Dr. Nastel. Today I want to talk with you about the research project. As you know, this is the main assignment for our class. So this is a pretty long document and it has a ton of information. So just to kind of give you an overview of what's in this, we have information about the two pieces of the project, so your author's letter and the final research analysis essay. I recommend doing your author's letter last, writing that after you've written the main project, but it'll be important for you to consider these questions as you're writing. So we have the essay requirements, suggestions on timeline and workload, suggestions on approaching the project, as well as a very general outline. And then here is a more specific outline of how you can bring your sources together, information about how to work with your sources, how to work with the analysis, how to bring together your sources for the answers, which I think is really important and kind of different from more report writing. And then I have an application of that idea. So this is the overview of the document. So let's go back up. So the main thing to keep in mind for this project is that we are critically analyzing a range of sources that answer your research question. So you'll have a question, you're going to examine the sources and pull out the different answers they each have for your question. So just like when we were working with the Queen City Writers assignment, with that we reviewed a number of sources and then pulled out one major theme that seemed to emerge. Maybe you focused on gender roles. So we saw in a number of sources within that journal, several different authors discussed gender roles. Okay, so same kind of thing here. You're going to work with your general kind of question or topic and pull out the different answers or themes that emerge from your various sources. So the author's letter, you can think about it like a personal introduction to the project. What do you want your readers to understand about your work? For the essay itself, we're using the submission guidelines for Queen City Writers. So you can choose, as you know, you can choose any kind of topic that relates to this description. So questions and problems related to writing, rhetoric, reading, pedagogy, and teacher training. Pedagogy is like the act of teaching or the practice of teaching. Literacy, pop culture and media, community discourses, and multimodal and digital composing. You are going to write 1,750 to 2,500 words. You're going to use a minimum of 6 sources. At least 1 needs to be a book chapter and 3 need to be scholarly peer-reviewed sources. The others can be really anything: websites, Instagram posts, newspapers or magazines, interviews, government documents. At least 3 of your sources must be current, so from the past 5 years. You'll write in MLA formatting, and this is a state requirement. You must pass this assignment to be eligible to earn a C in the class. So just like in Queen City Writers, you're going to read more than you end up using in your project. That's part of the research process. It can feel maddening, it can feel very frustrating, especially when you're trying to be efficient with your time, but it's important because it helps, like all of that material that we read through helps us understand more about what we actually care about and what we want to write about. And actually all of that skimming, even the material that isn't relevant, that's a choice we're making. We're thinking through the process and identifying this is relevant, this is not relevant, and just kind of affirming for ourselves what's not relevant helps us be stronger in our ideas about what is relevant. So it's an important part of the process. Please don't wait until the night before to complete this project. You really, as you know, you can't do that with any of our assignments, but particularly this one. This is really the whole point of the class. Please think very, very carefully about how you're going to break up your time to be able to do this work. So in general, you're going to use your introduction again to provide some helpful background information. Readers don't need an attention grabber. You can include one if you'd like, but it's not a requirement. The main thing I want to know is what do we need to know to understand your analysis? What kind of background information about the topic in general, or about your questions specifically, or your sources? What information do the readers need to know for you to have the intended effect on them? The body is going to present and analyze the different answers you have found. And then the conclusion will have two parts. Rather than summarizing everything you've said, you're going to think about, again, kind of using research for action or for progress. So first, what do you personally, individually think about all of this stuff? This can be your reaction, it can be kind of what you're surprised by, or what you thought you would find and didn't. And then the last paragraph would be thinking about the next steps. So in the future, what additional kind of research needs to be done on this kind of question? What do you personally want to do to continue this research? Here you're going to be reminding us not only of what needs to be done, but also why it's important that it is done. So here's a little bit more structured outline. In general, you're going to have the background. You might have some more specific background information or key terms. And then in the third paragraph, like in the Queen City Writers assignment, you might include a discussion of your method. What did you do to conduct the research? You could also think about introducing your research question here and how it relates to the background information. So what kinds of things have led you to your question, and how did you attempt to answer it? Then this information in paragraphs 4 through 6, this is really important, and this really differs our analytical kind of essay from a traditional persuasive essay. So very similar to the Queen City Writer structure. First, you're going to provide a general overview of the first answer you found to your question. You're simply going to summarize or paraphrase your sources. You're not going to include quotations here. Then the next paragraph, you are going to go into more details about that answer. You don't have to quote every single source, but you do have to give us some specific information that lets us know, what does this answer mean? How do people talk about this answer? And then the next paragraph will be your analysis and your evaluation of that answer. So you could think about things like, why do some people believe this is right? Why do some people disagree? What do you think can be done to improve that answer? Or what do some of your other sources say about that answer? What do you think about it? What gaps exist about this answer? All of those kinds of questions. So you'll repeat this structure, this paragraphs 4 through 6 structure, for each of the different answers you found to your question. And in that way, you'll be able to arrive at this penultimate paragraph. What do you think and why? And again, you'll be able to then add on to that in your conclusion. Based on doing this kind of analytical work, you'll have a better opportunity to explain to readers what we do next. So again, I said this is the suggestions for working with sources, suggestions for taking notes to contribute to your analysis. And then at the end, I have an application of the outline. So one of my students' questions, actually a couple from this past year, was how can minority students' graduation rates improve? So that's a really big question. You could narrow it. How can English composition classes help minority students' rates improve? How can advisors help? How can minority students' graduation rates improve in minority serving institutions? You can see how we've adapted the question in a couple of different ways to make it a little bit more narrow, which then makes it a little bit easier to answer. You'll be able to find more relevant sources if you have a clearer direction. Or you could keep your question really broad and have different sections of it. So these would be like the sub-questions. How can minority students' graduation rates improve in higher ed? One answer is through English composition classes. Another answer is by working with advisors. A third is through mentorship programs. And a final one is through more federal and state governmental programs. So by keeping this broad question and then breaking up the different answers into subtopics, then we created this outline. So now you have different sections explaining the overview, the details, the analysis. Here's an example of the different sources that might be used to answer those questions. So I know this is, again, a lot of information. What I have found in my experience teaching the research project in this way is that students typically find a project that they are pretty interested in and have a lot of connection to. So they're able to say more, not only about the sources and about the answers, but also about the future directions. I know we have a short amount of time. It might be harder to find something that you have a connection with, but if you can think about the ways that you relate to the sources you're finding, I think that might help you write a fulfilling kind of project. Please take a look at the assignment sheet, get started on the work, and let me know when you have questions. I want to remind you that working with Bill on your research project, he'll be able to help guide your research questions and supplement any of the sources that you've already found. And then the Writing Center can help with some of the writing, and as well as analyzing and understanding some of the sources you have found. And then of course I'm available to help with all of it. And I'm very happy to do it. I cannot emphasize enough how much I enjoy talking to students individually, as well as in a class. But I want to make sure that you're on the right track, and that you're just about ready to finish the class and to succeed. So please contact me and have a great time.